Jason, how's it going today?
It's going well, my friend. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on too because thus far, every guest that's been on the show, I've known personally for at least a year or so. And they come on here, they tell their personal stories, and they're comfortable because they know me. But this is the first time, like I met you like at a networking event a while ago, and we talked for like maybe an hour, which is great. But now we're about to get really deep really quickly. So this will be an experience for me too because I have no idea what you're going to talk about, and
I
neither
like it
does the
that way.
audience.
Yeah, that's great. No, I and
so
and you know it says a lot. I really appreciate you obviously asking to have me on here because a lot of my story and a lot of what gets me going every day is to really help people that maybe are going through some of the things that I have gone through or am currently going through.
Got it. Well, let's start with the bright side because you're doing a
Yeah.
lot of cool stuff. You've done a lot of cool stuff. So let's just go ahead and brag for a little bit just to warm it up here.
Sure. I'm a 23-year overnight success in the commercial real estate industry. I've been super fortunate to represent companies like Starbucks Coffee, brought Chipotle to New York, early 2000s, started representing a brand called Orangetheory Fitness at their first studio. Still remain very close with the founders of that company. Just accomplished the 100 studio mark with a client that I initially was working with when they only had a handful in Washington, D.C. That company is called Solid Core, which is one of the dominant corporately owned boutique group fitness companies on the planet today. I helped the founder, my friend, exit at 100 studios for just shy of 90 million. So, all fun things, checking boxes along the way, having some fun.
Yeah, you're checking some pretty big boxes. I mean, you're being humble about it. But let's talk about checking boxes a bit further here because on your Instagram, I see you have this daily routine that you go through and you
Yeah.
check the boxes off once you complete them. Do you mind, first of all, explaining what the routine is
Sure.
and what caused you to create it?
Yeah. So, I pride myself on really surrounding myself with inspirational people that are way further ahead than me at things, right? So those people kind of pull me along. I'm extremely disciplined, and consistency is one of my superpowers. But having said that, when you start surrounding yourself with people that are really at the top of their game as far as high performance goes, as you know, Terry, it starts to rub off on you. So this I would say that when I first did 75 hard in probably during the pandemic, I want to say it was 2020. I was living a healthy lifestyle already, and a workaholic as well, and I wanted to start checking my relationship with alcohol, and I did 75 hard. For those who don't know, 75 hard is essentially two workouts a day. They have to be a minimum of, I think, 3 hours apart. One has to be outdoors, no alcohol, 10 pages of a book, very clean eating, a gallon of water a day. And, the next year, I felt so good as a result of doing 75 hard that the next year I did 75 hard 3 times. And part of the reason for it was, first off, I was bored as hell during COVID, right? So I had to fill my time, and I just wanted to level up as much as possible. And somebody who's as busy as me, when you're not as busy as you're used to being, I had to fill those gaps. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because I started to realize that my very close friends who drink heavily would start to not ask me why I'm not drinking when I was doing 75 hard. So I actually used it as a tool to not have to explain to people why I wasn't drinking anymore. So in that first, in that second year that I did it 3 times, that's where those kind of daily habits started to happen. And I was thinking to myself, how can I create a routine for myself that's really like an everyday daily habit routine that was definitely 75 hard inspired, where I don't need to be doing a program like that to just be living an optimized life.
Got it. It's funny. You said you did 75 hard 3 times in 1 year. Quick math tells me that's around 240 days. So that's pretty much the whole year. So yeah,
Correct.
you definitely you definitely made it a routine there.
Yeah.
and you can you just share what that checklist is that you go through on
Absolutely.
a daily
Yes.
basis?
That's right. Yeah. So an ice bath, a fasted workout, not eating before 1 p.m., hitting my body weight in grams of protein. REM, trying to get a minimum of, I believe, 1.5 hours of REM sleep. Mouth taped shut at night to sleep, and evening journaling, I think. And alcohol used to be on it, but it's no longer necessary because that's not a thing any longer.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we both do fasted workouts, and we both worked out today. And it's 11 o'clock our time right now, so we both have another couple of hours before we eat. Let's see how this conversation goes. We're both.
Terry, my challenge now is that I'm actually trying to break my routine of intermittent fasting, because you and I have this in common. I was very overweight at one stage of my life. And I actually shed like 50 plus pounds by doing the Atkins diet. I'm talking like, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And, that was the first time I ever experienced like a normal weight, and, being, maybe considered even like skinny, or not necessarily fit, but skinny for the first time, not overweight. Now I have that mechanism in my head that unfortunately like sometimes keeps me tied to like cardio and eating salads. I can't, even though I know that's not the answer, I sometimes resort back to that stuff, the fat kid in me. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. So it's like, and I remember, like, I don't know, we'll go too down this rabbit hole, but I remember like spending a lot of time trying to manage my wardrobe to hide the way I looked, like trying to find shirts that would hide like my man boobs and stuff. And it's like, bro, you can also just lose weight. That's an option as well. Like, so.
And you know what? So when you see the person pulling the bottom of their shirt out, like as if it's, like it's just that insecurity of like not seeing your love handles. Like I know that I feel it, but there's a way to actually like fit in your clothes. It takes hard work.
It's funny. I still don't tuck my shirt in because I'm just kind of sloppy.
Oh, I don't either. No, but I meant like when people like even in t-shirts, like it's an overweight kind of insecurity habit that you like pull the shirt away from your stomach because you feel like you could kind of see the A and the C curve, of your love handles. So it's a thing that I'm used to, and when I see people doing it, I'm like, just optimize your life, man. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So you mentioned doing 75 hard during COVID as being one of the best times of your life. And as you know, on this show, we also talk about one of the worst times of your life. So I want to thank you in advance for your honesty, for your openness, for your authenticity, because I know it's what our listeners need to help push through their own challenges. Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to you whenever you're ready here.
Yeah, so this is an easy one for me, unfortunately. So my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was in college at the University of Arizona. And I had to make the decision when I learned about, her cancer diagnosis. I had to make the decision, was I going to stay at school in Arizona or come home and start, figuring out, business and going into the family business, which was the automobile business. And I had a conversation with my father when I was visiting. I was still going to the University of Arizona, but I was visiting home, and he and I were having a conversation at my kitchen table, and my mom was starting to deteriorate pretty significantly. And he said to me in that moment, Jay, if you want to go into the family business, which I would suggest, you have to leave school now and you have to come home, because I'm not going to have the head to train you. And I just don't want to work much, after everything that I'm going through with your mother, right? So I looked at him and I said, listen, it's not my business, it's your business. And whatever you think you need to do with the business is up to you. I am not going to go into the family business, and I'm also not going to come home from college. I need to finish college, and I need to, figure out on my own what I want to do with the rest of my life. So that decision for me gave me less time with my mother while she was alive, because she ended up passing away Probably within, let's call it a year and a half, 2 years of that conversation. And what I didn't know in that moment was how I would lose my family unit in that moment. When my mom passed, she was the glue to everything in the family. And my father, unfortunately, even though right after she passed, almost by her bedside, said to my sister and I, we need to stick together now more than ever. And it's just the three of us. And following that day, he ended up selling our house, without even letting us know, and moving to Florida and getting remarried within, probably about 4 months or so of my mother passing, which unfortunately continued to be a habit of his through the rest of his life. And I'll kind of ruin the end of that story. My father passed away on December 27th of 2023. So I'm in the process of grieving my father's loss now. But that gap in between, just so I don't forget, 11/28/2000, when my mom passed. Her birthday's on the front here, May 5th, 45. That gap in between 11/28/2000 and only a few months ago when my father passed, my father made a lot of bad decisions that forced my sister and I to always kind of, come to the rescue, even though he, didn't really support us for let's call it 23 years of our life. So, needless to say, going back to my mom passing, I was in my early 20s, already really loved partying and drinking alcohol and numbing myself with anything around me. So, as you would imagine, in that moment, as a young person who copes through booze and substances, I just continued to do that. And, it got really dark. I mean, I got to a place where, I truly, and I don't talk about this, but, I was at a place where I didn't care, if I lived or died in that stage of life for me, because, in some strange way, there's not really a downside to not being here. I had close friends, but I didn't have a purpose. And, I wouldn't find purpose really until years later. And I'm sure we'll get there. But the event, I would say, that really, that was rock bottom for me, which I also don't talk about, is one night, I was a DJ, and I was spent a lot of time in nightclubs, just partying all night, getting up and doing my day job during the day. This is prior to commercial real estate. And one night I'm out with friends, and I couldn't really afford to live in the city anymore. And my sister wasn't doing well. She broke off an engagement, while going through all of this. So I figured that I'd move in with her back in Long Island and, obviously spend time in the city and whatnot. And one night we were partying at a club called Lot 61, and we were drinking a ton. I was, drinking heavily. And I decided to leave the club and with a friend, essentially, and get in my car and head back to Long Island at like 4:30 in the morning. And I ended up, being again kind of in that mindset where you just don't fear consequences. I get on the LIE and I'm doing about 90 miles an hour, practically blackout drunk, and I end up getting pulled over. And in that state of mind, I was so arrogant and not in fear of the consequences that I ended up getting in quite a argument with the two police officers that were arresting me. And I, as a result of handling the situation that way, they made an example of me, and I was pulled over in the Hempstead district and essentially put in jail for what could have been one night, but based on my behavior, ended up being 2 nights. So, that was by far the lowest I had been. When after the euphoria of this, like invincibility and party vibe, dissipates when you're sitting on a concrete slab in a jail cell, with a cellmate, person that obviously you don't know, and you don't know what they're capable of and what they're in there for. And, that was, for me, when I realized that, I had to, there were two directions I could go. And, spending those 2 nights, helped me realize which direction I needed to go. And that was the moment that I stopped feeling sorry for myself and realized that my mother would, be extremely upset with the way that I was handling everything.
Yeah, I want to take a step back here. I mean, on mine, I've been that guy before. I worked at bars and clubs all through undergrad and all through business school, and we used to race back home.
Yeah.
I'm in Buffalo at this time, so we've been up since like whatever time drinking, and it's like 5 a.m. It's Buffalo, so the roads are snowy, and we're still doing like 90 on the 33, like a highway out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it never occurred to me, like, hey, this is a dumbass idea.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like, I wasn't like looking forward to death. I still had a fear of death, but it wasn't enough for me to like sober up and not take that action. And there were also times I got pulled over, like drunk, like straight up drunk. And I'd get out of it because I knew the cops and everything. I'm like, I got away with it.
Yeah.
And I wish I had your experience where I actually did get locked up, because I think I would have stopped drinking a lot sooner in life.
Yeah, well, let me not give you the wrong impression. I didn't stop drinking.
Okay, let's continue the story.
I stopped drinking and driving.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was. Let's just say that was like the moment that I realized I wanted to live. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the moment that I realized that, I was wasting my life away, because I was still, I was still somewhat, I don't want to say like successful, but I wasn't considered, a degenerate. I wasn't considered somebody, like, if you looked at me, you wouldn't know really what I was going through. And I think, for me, I continued the party, as most young people do. And Terry, I mean, I've been pulled over many times before that. Also, inebriated and getting myself out of tickets and going to jail. But that experience, when I was transported on the bus with all of the other inmates to the court, handcuffed, and the entire bus started singing 50 Cent, "What up, blood? What up, cuz? What up, blood? What up, gangsta?" the whole way. And let's just say I did not fit in very well on that bus. But having, listen, I grew up very street smart. I was constantly, I would say, straddling both sides, right? Like, I had my group of friends that were academics and athletes and so on and so forth, and then my group of friends that almost, I'm not even joking, at least half of that group is no longer alive, right? Mm-hmm. But it was the experience of the family unit, right? For me, like, it was the experience of my father, just focusing solely on himself and really letting us down, and quite frankly, disappearing and giving us no support, from that moment on. Like, my dad didn't even know the situation of me being in jail. My dad is, so I just, from that moment, I realized, that's when I fucking realized, dude, that nobody cares, right? Yeah. Like, it's literally on me to decide what I'm going to do with my life. When you realize that, your father, and it's tough for me to talk this way, but I have to, I think, with, coming to terms with who my father was. I think it's really important for me because, the closest people in my life really frown upon, who my father was to my sister and I. And I've always just wanted to protect, right? Well, he grew up in Brooklyn with no dad, enlisted himself in the Marines, was in Vietnam. Like, that doesn't mean that you don't have to be a great father that, is there, right? Like, that doesn't mean that. And those lessons through my life, like just as an example, I went to my dad to borrow a couple of bucks to get on my feet. My father's answer, I'm not a bank. I get into commercial real estate. I started having success at the first company that I worked for, was representing Starbucks exclusively, Chipotle exclusively, and I all of the bigger commercial real estate companies started to notice what I was doing and pursuing me to bring me on. I ended up cutting a deal with CBRE at the end of 2006. They paid me handsomely to go, and I had an amazing package. And I ran, to my father to talk about this. I'll never forget, it was my birthday. And we're sitting down and we're talking about, oh, what's going on? What are you doing? And I'm so excited to tell him this. This is like the first time that I've accomplished something pretty good, and he's going to be proud. And I said, Dad, I was just paid to go to CBRE. I have this awesome title and, this expense account and, all this health insurance for the first time. And he turns and looks at me and goes, Jay, everybody at the bank's a first vice president.
What the hell?
I don't work at a bank, and I, that was, and it was in front of my sister and her husband. And, it was literally just like, what, really? Like, that's what's up,
Yeah, I can relate. It's funny. The more you're talking, I'm just amazed at how much we have in common. Because like my dad fought in Vietnam too, right? He was in the army, and not the same experience growing up, but just like the parallels and how it can impact you. But on my end, it's tough to talk about some of these experiences. It's not my dad, but my mom. I remember like when I got a job at Facebook, and this is like years ago when it was like really hard to get a job there. After I went to business school, after I got a job at Adobe, and she straight up said, none of you have ever done anything to make me proud. And I was like, damn, like that was just so specific. Like, all three of you have ever done anything, not making a JV basketball team, not getting a job at Facebook, not getting an MBA, like nothing. And I was like, damn. But at that moment, I was like, look, this ain't gonna work. Like, there's no way I'm ever gonna like please this person. And I love my mom. I'm not like talking shit about her. But I was just like, this is not like a me thing. That's a her thing. She's got to sort out. And, I can still love her and respect her. But I am not going to try to bring any accolades to her and expect any kind of good response because it ain't happening.
Yeah. And I need to say that too. I love my dad. There were plenty of things he did to help me in life earlier on, to help instill in me values and work ethic and all the things that definitely play a major role in who I am for sure. And listen, and the tough skin and the attitude and he was a very, very hard nosed, super Italian, just tough guy, so that, has definitely helped mold me in a world that's not easy. And I will tell you that those disappointments, with him also, gave me a major chip on my shoulder, man. And at the end of the day, fortunately, that drive and determination and fuel to show him that I could do something with my life converted over to showing myself that I could do something with my life. So it no longer, understanding how he would respond to me accomplishing anything, I no longer had to, I didn't have, that wasn't my goal any longer, right? But it was, man, like if my dad is not like the person like shouting from the roof, not my biggest fan and like trying to help me, you know, gain ground in any way, like win in life, like, just encouragement or help. I mean, really any, like, and I almost feel blessed that I didn't have that, because I mean, that's the killer instinct that I have, right? Like, you can't take away my drive and determination and discipline and resilience. You can't, like, it's just, and not everybody's built this way, right? And that, like, almost, that collision of emotions and life experience and realizing like, man, like my I don't have a mom and my dad's not really gonna help. Like, I gotta figure this shit out. Like, it's on me now, right?
Yeah. And I want to get to that point. And I have two questions. One is, you said you found your purpose eventually. So I want to hear about that. And on the back end, I'm curious about how you show up for your children based on the experience you had growing up. So we'll start with the first one. How did you find your purpose eventually? Because I mean, honestly, like, you're crushing it, in my opinion, and I know how that feels. Because like the whole time when I was drinking every day, I was working at Adobe too. Like, I had like corporate jobs, like making six figures in New York. So I was like, hey, it's working. I'm finding this balance between getting drunk every day and still, maintaining this job, and it worked until it didn't. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, when you found your purpose, and again on the back end, how that shows up for you as a parent.
Yeah. So I mean, it's basically one and the same. I found my purpose when I had my first child, when I had my first son, like that was. Now I also want to say that losing my mother at a young age, the only positive thing that came out of that was when there were other people that I knew or met that were going through something similar, I could help them. And that always made me feel good. Like, and I had my wife lost her mother, and after me, and, being able to help somebody that's going through such a difficult thing, always, was definitely part of my purpose after going through that myself. But I really didn't wake up and understand why I was here until I had children. Like, that was the spark for me. And then, fast forward as I started to really find a niche for myself in business, I always wanted to help young people because, the commercial real estate industry is a very difficult industry. It's even more challenging, I think, in New York, like most things. And the senior level people in the industry, a lot of them intentionally keep the younger people down. So, I'm my dad's telling me to go be a fireman, which is, I think an amazing thing, right? Police and firemen are amazing people. But my dad's telling me, since I'm not making money, I'm actually going into debt working for somebody because I'm taking a draw, go just get a job that pays you with that has additional benefits and so on, always talking me out of. And then when I started to get some success in commercial real estate, the senior level people were trying to talk me out of it and telling me that I should go be doing something else. So I feel like people were always, trying to like throw a wrench in my career. But to answer your question, I initially in business, I became a workaholic. I was really good. I became great like you at drinking and performing, what I thought at the time was being a high performer, even though I was hungover, 5 days a week. And you don't really understand what that is. You have this like warped perception of self, I think, personally, until you actually get clear and thaw out. You have this warped perception of yourself. And I definitely did. To me, being this hardworking person that was out at night, whether I was moving the needle out at night, if I was just making an excuse to go out drinking with people that were in the industry. Like, to me, I'd explain to my wife, like, no, I need to do this. Like, this is how I'm going to get ahead. This is what, and then, all of my behaviors early on almost led to, the collapse of my marriage on multiple occasions. And drinking was always the reason for it. But, I thought I was so good at convincing myself and my wife that these are the things I needed to do to get ahead in my career. And, I'm really, I regret a lot of the decisions I made, in the beginning of my marriage. And I tell my wife this all the time, that without her, kind of showing me the way and leading me to fitness and wellness and all these things that now, I'm one of the premier wellness, healthy lifestyle advisors for companies in the country, and all of that stems from, and trust me, my wife takes any opportunity to remind me that when she was waking up at 5 a.m. to go crush a run, I'd be yelling at her like, can you please make less noise, because I got home at 2 a.m. and I'm still drunk. Like, so, it's, I had to navigate it my own way and wake up on my own and find, and become mature enough to realize that I was really only lying to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, like a lot of parallels. And when I think back to those moments, I mean, like, after we end this podcast, I gotta go thank my wife again, even for putting up with my shit. Because I look at who I was as a person. I'm like, I would not want to hang out with me on a regular basis, like the way I was behaving. And it just really does show like who has your back and who doesn't. When you look at who was there to support you during those tough times, and again, back to being a father. I mean, that's really what made me snap out of it too. And I just realized like this kid needs me. They need me at my best. And I have to be healthy. I have to be around, or else like I'm ruining lives if I don't.
Yeah.
And just that sense of purpose, to your point, really did anchor me into being a better person. But I want to make this helpful for people who are not gonna have kids to get out of their challenges. So what would you say to anyone else who was going through like a challenging time? And I know it's like a very broad question in regards to how they can find their purpose, find a way out, find some kind of hope for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you have to just stack really, really tiny wins, and I look at every day as its own challenge. And I think there's opportunities and challenges in every day that the only way to establish confidence is to do things that you say you're going to do, right? And things that you're not so sure you can do. And that means starting small, right? Like you and I were both out of shape. The workout you described to me that you did today lets me know that you've been putting in that work for a long time. And that's energy, man, right? So like I really believe in momentum. And this is coming from somebody who's suffered from severe panic attacks after I lost my mother and my dad took off. I would have debilitating panic attacks. I didn't really know what they were. And I remember times where breathing was hard, so I remember those times, and it's really like movement is medicine. And even if it's going for a walk, right? And then the next day, if you go around your block once, go around it twice, and listen to yourself, and you're going to start to see some sort of positive energy as a result of movement. And for me, the physical, like looking good has been a byproduct of the hard work I'm doing on myself. But all of the physical activity that I do has nothing to do with the vanity of looking good. It has to do with keeping my mind right. Because I'm afraid of my mind, man. Like I have I think a brilliant mind that's both creative and can execute. But I have crazy thoughts, and I know that, if I'm not able to channel them, and if I'm not able to, again, just find peace and fulfillment, which is my goal every day, that I could still fall off. Like, so I think for anybody who's struggling with anything, get yourself up in the morning and do some sort of physical activity. And if drinking or substances, are an issue for you, they probably have a big, they're probably a big factor in, your struggle, even more so than you realize. And I can only say that, being clean now for a year and a half, I can only say that because I didn't know any of this, the way that I feel every day, the way that I show up for myself and then everybody else as a result of showing up for myself. You know what? I used to also struggle with people talking about selfishness. My wife would say to me, you are selfish. You're focusing on yourself, and not everybody understands how important it is to be selfish about the most important things that matter to you, that give you the energy and the resilience to go about your day, to be able to provide for the people around you, right? Like that's really, really, really important. And the analogy that everybody uses is putting your oxygen mask on first on an airplane. Like it is that important, man. If my cup is not full, there's no way that I could help all the people that rely on me on a daily basis. And that includes my wife and my kids, obviously at the top of that list. And, that's when I think you start to realize you also can't listen to everybody. You can't listen, even people who love you, right? Like my wife, thank God my wife was so stringent and challenging to me out of love, right? Because I never would have woke up. I credit her for that. But now I also know that there's certain things she'll say that aren't, I can't listen to, right? Like the you're being selfish thing. I know that I'm being selfish for the benefit of her, right? So like, and I'm not always the best communicator. I could probably just tell her that. So, it's really just movement creates momentum, and every day do something a little bit more challenging so you're proud of yourself for doing that damn thing.
Yeah. Let's end with this. I'm going to ask you what might be a challenging question because we're both high performers. We're both very driven. We both know what can happen when you apply hard work consistently. But is there an end goal? Do you feel like you're always going to want to keep on ascending, or is there a point where you're going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to cruise for the rest of my life? Like that's what I struggle with because even my dad passed away of cancer as well when he was like 66. Sorry. But he was like not working like at his job anymore. He was like doing like volunteer work. He was holding workshops at his home, free workshops for people, teaching them like biz dev stuff, like buying like hors d'oeuvres and shit. And I'm like, Dad, like take a break. Like you have cancer. Like what's your deal?
Sure.
So he didn't stop because he wanted to be useful. So on your end, what do you think is going to happen? Are you going to eventually hit a point where you're like, you know what, I could like not work anymore and just be okay for the rest of my life, or are you just going to keep on hustling?
No, I mean, I recently said, and this is what I'm going to stick with, I recently said that I want to make a living. And that is everything to me. I feel like I'm just getting started, like I want to have a big impact on this world. I want to be able to help people, that need help. All different types of people, my family, needs me. My kids are young, like I got a lot of work to do, man. And, it gives me, again, purpose. Like if I wasn't getting weekends are tough for me, man. Like I don't, I have to work a little bit in weekends. It's just how I'm wired. And I'm not ashamed of that. My father retired when my mom passed away. He was in his mid 50s, and I watched him lose purpose over the next, call it 25 years of his life. He lost purpose and he lost his identity. And, he kind of like always struggled with that. And I think that's where like his struggle for him was, as I was accomplishing things, there was almost a jealousy there. It was it was something like that. So I will never stop. I love the game. and I play in a lot of different industries as well. Real estate is my backbone. But now it's time to spread my wings, man. We got work to do, and you and I got to do stuff together. There's so much opportunity out there, right? It's like, let's have fun, and the challenge is what makes it fun, And like, what the hell would you do if you didn't have to get up and do, act? Listen. I'm not even employable at this stage of my life, right? I've owned my own company for 13 years. And even being a commercial real estate broker for 10 years prior, you're not your own boss because you're not signing the checks, but you're an independent contractor. You're not an employee. So that mentality for me has been ingrained in me for 23 years. I think that I think the fact that there's so much opportunity to really do anything you set your mind to, that's the exciting part of being here, and meeting people like you and having conversations like this and sharing that, regardless of where you start, you can accomplish tremendous things so long as you really break it down into days and hours. Right? Like if you focus on your day and you break it down and you focus on being productive, not busy, right? And things that are really moving the needle. We all like to do busy shit, right? It makes us feel like we're accomplishing something. We're getting somewhere. I was so busy. I had to go to that dinner and get hammered. What do you mean? Like that was an important dinner for me to go to, right? All those things. This is the maturity and the wisdom that you realize as you get a little bit older. But man, no, I want to get up and be challenged every single day. I'm trying to find peace. And I think that's my definition of success is peace and fulfillment. So if I can wake up every day and not necessarily be told where I need to be every single hour, I'm happy, but I'm also willing to do things I don't want to do. And that's how I got here. You have to do things you don't want to do to ultimately be able to one day do the things you want to do.
There's this brand called, I think it's called The Few, and their motto is hard work in a soft world. So yeah. I dig that. And Jay, I want to say thank you for this. Again, we met like at a networking event, talked for a while, and I felt a connection, and it's I'm experiencing that again. So I appreciate it. And I know our audience wants to learn more about you as well. So where's the best place for them to learn more about you going forward?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and the feeling's mutual, Terry. We're gonna be good friends for a long time, and I'm excited to develop that friendship. Everybody can really find me on Instagram. It's my full name, JaysonSiano. You can get to my website, which is also JaysonSiano.com or jsiano.com, and all the other places from there. My main business is Sabre, and the website for Sabre is sabre.life, because it's a lifestyle.
Love it. Jay, is there a quote you want to end this with, like a favorite quote or saying? Because I don't want it to be like transactional at the end, like follow me for this more shit. Like, is there anything you want to use to cap this off?
I mean, there's so many, and I'm constantly, I post quotes all the time, and I'm sure you see them. I start my morning on Instagram, on my Instagram story with a daily quote. So I think it's only fitting that I read the quote from my Instagram this morning.
Let's do it.
The best thing I ever did was not listen to other people about what I should do with my life.
Fitting.
Wow.
There we go.
It's funny because when I posted it, I didn't even remember what I posted, but it's full circle, my brother.
There we go. Jay, thanks. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.